So over a month after releasing its final episode onto Disney Plus, and almost being forgotten about entirely by everyone, The Acolyte has come back for one last hurrah in the news cycle with the announcement of its cancellation. And I couldn't be happier. We won, boys. The war is over. Now, in all seriousness, this sort of thing happens all the time in the TV industry, and especially with streaming. And yeah, it sucks, but considering how frequently it happens, you would expect the Star Wars community to react reasonably, right? Right? Well, you would be wrong, because they responded as if this is a modern-day 9/11. The sheer amount of copium that I've seen on my timeline for the past few days is insane, and most of these complaints and defenses don't even work. Oh, why would they cancel the show? The narrative about it performing poorly is just wrong. It did relatively well. Relative to what? Your middle school short film that you made for your science project that only got like 5 views that were just your science teacher and your mom? Listen, the show didn't do well enough to warrant a second season of a $200 million show. I've seen people say that they should have given Acolyte another chance, and to that I say, do you know how much $200 million is? I know we live in the era where billion-dollar shows exist, but seriously, $200 million is still a lot of money. I'm sorry, but with everything they got to do in season 1, they got their chance, and they blew it. If anything, we should be celebrating the idea that Disney might be a little bit more careful in the future with what they spend their money on. I've also been seeing this loss of jobs argument, which really holds no water and just shows people's ignorance and complete lack of knowledge when it comes to the TV and film industry. The argument really boils down to the idea that since the show has now been canceled, all of the people have been fired from their jobs on the show. Which, no, that's not how that works, I'm sorry. If anything, according to this logic, all of those jobs have already been lost, since post-production has been done for well over 6 months, and especially for pre-pro and production, since those took place probably 1 to 3 years beforehand. The only people left working on the show right now would be the select few actors, writers, and directors who are doing press tours for the show. And even then, that was in their contract to begin with. Keyword here is contract. Everyone who was hired to do the show signed a contract to work on season 1. Clearly, there was no foresight in plans to make season 2 in the contracts that the employees signed. And this is where the language of how people talk about this cancellation really bugs me, because nothing was technically canceled. Disney just decided not to renew another season of a terribly performing show. And people are acting as if The Acolyte was planned to be this multi-season arc, which not really. It was clearly greenlit for season 1 and they wanted to see how it performed before giving a season 2. If people are mad about a show getting cut short, then imagine how mad they're going to be when they realize that Andor was supposed to be a 5-season show and has now been cut down to only 2 seasons. And if anyone's just going to say, oh, well, it wasn't planned for multi-seasons, but now all of those hypothetical jobs will never exist. Who cares about hypotheticals? People, come on. All the cast and crew probably had new jobs lined up for them right after they were done with filming. They're probably working on a new project right now while you're watching this video. Now, this whole situation has spawned some of the funniest news articles that I've ever seen. And specifically, I'm talking about this Rolling Stones article. I'll read this paragraph for you here because it's quite humorous. These fans say they're fighting for Star Wars' future. But if their endless fantasy world can't accept any stories they don't recognize, some of the self-professed biggest fans of all the worlds could be closing themselves off from any future at all. What is crystal clear is that before Star Wars can have another successful show, the loudest voices online need to realize the Star Wars they want to return to never existed in the first place. What is bro yapping about? What do you mean? The Star Wars they want to return to never existed in the first place. Do you mean good writing? Because if so, you're wrong, because Andor exists, and it's one of the best pieces of Star Wars media we've had ever. Some would say that not only is it a good Star Wars show, but it's also the best Star Wars we've ever gotten ever, but that's a topic for another day. Seeing people act like The Acolyte is some misunderstood masterpiece is crazy to me, because now Star Wars fans are becoming Snyder fans. Honestly, I love to see it. It's entertaining. The Star Wars community is falling apart right before our eyes. Bro, what are you talking about? It already has, you just can't see it. Now, the biggest cope I've seen going along with this Snyder fan theory is the hashtag SaveTheAcolyte movement on Twitter. Yes, you heard me right. There are people actually going out there and tweeting about how they should save the Acolyte and renew the Acolyte. So if you're a fan of this show, let me break this down for you as kindly as I can. There is no hope. Unlike the completely indecisive multi-billion-dollar company that is Warner Brothers, Disney actually makes decisions that they will stick with. If they make this big of a decision, it's final. It's done. It's Jover. Yeah, there are exceptions to this rule, like the Clone Wars, but that show was way more popular than Acolyte will ever be. There also just won't be any longevity for this show considering how bad it is. A comparison we can make is Andor. Andor's viewing numbers were also pretty pathetic, but as the show went on and the word of mouth got out, more people started watching the show and it got some legs for the future. For example, I didn't watch Andor until 4 months after the finale aired, and then I started spewing about it on Twitter, and then I got a couple more people to watch it as well because I was annoying about it, because it's the best show ever made. I never see this happening with Acolyte, and this type of thing hasn't happened with any other Star Wars show. I've never seen anyone at all in my feed talk about how they went back and rediscovered Book of Boba Fett, or Kenobi, or Ahsoka. That's just not happening. Maybe Mandalorian, but that show was already a success. And there definitely won't be anyone going back and rediscovering Acolyte considering how poorly it did compared to Andor. There is no hope for its return. I'm sorry. Now, I know I'm praising this as a giant W, but there is a limit to this. A few hours after the cancellation was announced, all the Acolyte merch was stripped off of Disney stores, and people were starting to wonder whether or not they were going to pull the show entirely from Disney+. I even saw people advocating for this, and this is where I strongly disagree.
Disagree strongly!
I don't care how bad a show is or how unpopular a show is. It should never be completely stripped from public viewing. The loss of art is bad. That's it. You might remember back in 2022, the show called Willow was completely stripped from Disney+. And with no physical release, fans were left with no legal way to watch this show, which is really bad. Now, for legal reasons, I must say that I do not support the idea of engaging in illegal activities on the internet. Now, with that being said, I think piracy is really cool. Now, again, I don't want you to do it, but you know, it's an option. For example, there is no legal way to watch the original versions of the Star Wars trilogy legally, but I have them. And that's really cool. What I'm really trying to say is art, whether good or bad, has an inherent right to be viewed by everyone who wants to watch it. And in this era of streaming services, there are shows and movies that have been completely erased from the internet and have been lost to time. And that's why I think piracy is so important, because it gives people the option to watch the unwatchable. Right now, there is no official physical release of Daredevil Season 3, which means any day it could just be stripped off of Disney Plus and we could never see it again in any official capacity. That's just dystopian. Now, this video has really just turned into a soapbox for me to talk about the state of streaming and the merits of pirating when art is legally unobtainable, but I want to clarify my point here. Am I happy about Acolyte's cancellation? Yes. Not only because this is a sign that Disney might be more careful about what they spend their money on, also because now I won't have to hear people yelling in my ear whenever I try to critique the show and say, "Oh, wait for season 2, it'll explain everything." Well, how about now, buddy? There is no God that can save you now. Now, with that said, would I be happy if the show was completely stripped from Disney Plus? No. Now, at the end of the day, not only does art have the right to be viewed by everyone that wants to, but also because somewhere out there, Acolyte is someone's favorite show. Now, while I'll definitely judge them for their taste in media, I won't celebrate the fact that their show has been stripped away from them. And if anyone out there is celebrating the destruction of art, I don't trust their opinions at all. And that's it for me right now. Shout out to my members, and if you want to join and become a member of the channel, it's only $2 and you get these trash brain emotes. You can spam them whenever I'm live on YouTube, of course. And by doing so, you'll support me and the channel. Please give me money. College is expensive. Goodbye.